Hello and welcome. I am Scrapperlock, and this is City of Villains on the Rebirth server. We are with Nightmare Lass, our level 44 Mastermind, who has almost 17 million earned XP with just under 2.5 million to go to get to level 45. And we are on a story arc for Mage Killer Zukara, who, in character, we're role playing that our character is helping her, but also sneaking behind her back to do things. So one of the things she asked us to do was bring her books about demon summoning. We did that, but we copied them into our spell book before we did so. So we have a copy. She says, I've got bad news for you, Nightmare Lass. The soul trap you found me, it doesn't work. Not at all. Now, it could be that Ghost Widow managed to slip us a false prototype, or it could be that there's something else afoot. Regardless, I want you to go to the lab where the soul trap technology was first developed. You may be able to find something there, which is sort of weird, right? Because we're going up against mages, but apparently this is science and not magic because it was produced in a lab. So it's this weird sort of combo of magic and science. So now if it's science we end up going up against, Nightmare Lass won't care because she's a mage. But she's not going to help the mage killer kill all mages because that would kill us, right? So we are heading over, and we'll see just exactly what kind of a lab we end up with. This looks like an Arachnos lab. You know how much I love those. But, well, no choice. They like giving you those in this side of the game. Nope, regular lab. Much better. You gotta wonder, did they really think? Did they not in testing realize that those Arachnos labs are just awful to go through? Did they actually think they had created really cool graphics that players were going to love? Were they surprised to find out that a lot of players didn't like it? I don't know. Or were they, as one of my former supergroup mates, Ardiwin, accused them of doing in other elements of the game, like the ambushes, were they purposely trying to basically screw with the players and grief us? It's not that it wouldn't be the first time it happened. It was unusual, I think, in City of Heroes. I don't think that any of them were ever really trying to grief us. But there are other elements of gameplay. I've actually written in game reviews when I had a blog, which I haven't had in many years, and I was reviewing games. I actually said even of BioWare, which at one time was my absolute favorite game company, that I thought that certain things that they put into some of their games were almost literally meant to grief players. They weren't there to be a challenge, because they weren't really a challenge. They were just annoying and frustrating and time sinkish, and that they really seemed to be there just to tick us off and irritate us, which is griefing, right? And so I don't know. I think that griefing the players isn't something that in general the folks at City of Heroes did, but it's possible that some things were done that way. Again, my friend Ardiwin thinks that well, I guess we're not going to catch that guy. She thinks that the ambush missions and the escort missions were basically done to grief stalkers, and that the fact that it also is frustrating to Mastermind, in her words, that was an unplanned bonus, right? They didn't do it on purpose, but they were absolutely thrilled that it did grief us as well. I don't know about that. I mean, it's always hard to know what the intentions were. I always remember there's an old saying: you should never attribute to malice what could equally be explained by incompetence, right? Maybe they were simply incompetent. Maybe they were simply inobservant and dumb, and weren't able to realize that players with high-end graphics cards, for instance, would not want to spend hours and hours and hours going through a game where you could only see, like, about a third of the screen, and the rest of the screen was just black. I mean, like, you don't need a good graphics card for black. My old IBM PC with no graphics card could display black really well because it was a black background with green text, the so-called green screen, right? And some of them were amper as well. I mean, you didn't need a graphics card to display black. you need a graphics card to display all this cool background stuff, which they have in these labs, right? You can see 360, everything is visible all the way out to there, but if this were an Arachnos layer, we wouldn't be able to see past this pillar. And this all the rest of the screen would be basically black. Well, what do I need a good graphics card for that for? And how they didn't realize that that would frustrate some people, I don't know. Let's see, where are we going? We have an elevator, right? So we need to find the real soul trap. So my guess is it's going to be on the last level, whichever that is. Right, it won't be here, because then we could leave without going through the elevator. And just in terms of metagaming and level design, that wouldn't be the case. It's very, very rare that they design levels that did not have to be gone through. Now, with this level where we have elevators on both sides, if there's only one soul trap, and that seems to be the case, we're simply not going to be able to. The designers are not going to be able to make it so that you have to go through both levels, right? So one of these elevators is going to lead to the soul trap, and one of them is not. And I don't know which one it is, but in that case, then if this the soul trap was here, then we wouldn't have to go through the other level. And that's sort of the only exception to the map logic rule, that if there are elevators, you've got to keep going up or down them, because oh, that was a mistake. I want to hit the behemoth first, because the developers would not put all these levels in that you didn't need to go through generally. So in the last episode, I was talking about possible video games that I could play as Let's Plays, or talking about the fact that I need one. I need to come up with one, since I haven't yet. But of course, there's another option. I've mentioned it before, and I'm going to do it whether I record it or not. And that other option is playing some tabletop role-playing games solo. Now, I had tried doing this, recording it but not posting it, and I'm glad I didn't, with the game Ironsworn. It's a very good game to play solo, and there's a lot to like about it. And I think the non-combat elements of the game are quite strong, but for combat, I feel like I want something that is more explicitly defined with mechanics, so that there are things like flanking and positioning and strategy on a hex grid. And that may seem strange, right? I mean, after all, the reason Ironsworn doesn't have that is because one of its primary modes of play is solo, and when you're solo, you might say, well, what's the point of, let's say, a tactical situation, because you control both sides, so who are you defeating, right? You don't have to come up with a good tactic, because you are both sides, and you win either, whichever side wins, you're winning, right, essentially. Now, obviously, we're going to want our player character to win and not the NPCs, because if the player character dies, that's the end of what we're doing, right? You're done and you got to start over. But I still prefer things like, and I think I hear the glowy, so this looks like the right elevator to have gone down, but we'll see. I prefer things like, being able to do flanking and being able to do more explicit tracking of items, right? In Ironsworn, you can just sort of make up whatever item you want and say that you have it, and if you can find a way to justify it in the narrative, you're allowed to do that, and that's part of the rules. And again, it works really well solo, but I still prefer the more traditional way of running combat. And that's not a knock against Ironsworn, really. That's my hang-up, right? It's what I'm used to. It's what I'm most comfortable doing. And it may be that after I get enough experience solo tabletop, I may want to do Ironsworn. If you watch, as I have, and I can highly recommend it as a really good show. The YouTube show Me, Myself, and Die, like roll of the dice. We have to defeat all circles, so that means we have to go to every level. So there we go. That's why there were more levels for us to go to, because we have to defeat them all. So Me, Myself, and Die is this YouTube show by Trevor Duvall, who's a voice actor. He's amazing. Does a really good job with it. In his first season, he plays Savage Worlds, and he uses the Mythic game GM emulator and the fate chart from the Mythic emulator to run his game. And then in the second season, and I haven't watched second season because I still have like 2 or 3 more episodes of the first season to watch. It's 22 or 3 episodes long, and so I'm on like episode 19, and then I'm gonna have to do start watching the Ironsworn one. So I haven't watched him do Ironsworn, but he switched from doing the Mythic GM emulator and Savage Worlds to Ironsworn because he thought it was a superior way to do the soloing. But again, he did the soloing for 22 sessions using the old way, the old school way of doing it, which is the way I'm used to, before switching to Ironsworn. Now, I think Trevor Duvall had been doing solo tabletop gaming before. I don't think when he started the show it was the first time he ever did it, because I suspect most people would not try putting out a show of something they've never done. I mean, after all, with this, right, City of Heroes, even the first episode of the first Silver Phoenix video, certainly not the first I ever played City of Heroes. Now, I hadn't played it in many years, and I was a little rusty, but it wasn't the first time I'd played City of Heroes, and I knew what to expect. And in fact, that first video, the tutorial with Silver Phoenix was shot multiple times. I also shot a tutorial with Liberty Lass. I shot a tutorial with States Girl, which was another character I had created, and I shot a whole bunch of like level 1 to 8 content on the original Torchbearer server until I found out that the role players were all going to do what's the name of the server we're on now? I don't even remember. Everlasting was chosen as the official roleplay server, and then I had to move my character over and start recording things over again. And so by the time you're seeing that first video, I had recorded it multiple times, and I had recorded 7 or 8 levels of gameplay with my character. Now, I did record it and intend to post it, and then didn't, right? But my point is, it's very hard to make the commitment to record something that you've never done before. So I suspect that Trevor Duvall was not a novice at solo role-playing before he started Me, Myself, and Die, but I think he also, like any of us do when we practice, got a lot better at solo role-playing as he went. I think the show improved as he went, and his solo role-playing improved as he went. And again, thinking back, as I've mentioned to in previous episodes, the other people who have said Ironsworn's a great game, but it's not the game to start with as a solo role player, because it requires a lot of intuitive ability to interpret the oracles, and even in combat, it's all very vague, and you just sort of have to interpret, well, what does it mean that I have got a weak hit on a clash, right? Versus in D&D, like last night we had a session, and the Gnome Ranger, who usually hits almost all the time and does a lot of good damage, the player, her first roll was a 20, and everybody cheered, natural 20, critical hit, right? And then like 5 of her next 10 rolls were natural 1s, and she just missed over and over again, which was just hilarious. And but you can tell, so those are strong hit and a miss, right? But you can also tell in D&D, like a couple times she hit, and then she rolled damage and rolled a 1, and she knows she got a weak hit on the thing. Now, a weak hit in Ironsworn doesn't mean an actual physical strike, right? It means a weak success, a partial success. But partial success in combat is much easier to describe and define in a game like Dungeons and Dragons or Champions, to me, because you can see the roll on the dice and you know what the consequences are, rather than these sort of vague, in Ironsworn, where it just says you do some harm but you pay the price, and then pay the price might be this vague thing, something of value is lost to you. Well, what the heck might that be? It could be almost anything, right? And then it's my job as the DM to decide, well, what of value is lost? You don't have to worry about that in D&D. It's all explicitly defined, and I find that easier to deal with. And so I think, first time doing this, I tried Iron Sworn. I feel like I'm not ready for it. I think the person who said that it's something you should only do after you have experience first is probably right. And that means I'm going to be doing a different system, which I'll talk about after we contact the Mage Killer. Excellent. So what did the clue say? It didn't work out. She sent me to the lab where the trap was originally designed. There we found the circle had invaded the lab, and we were holding the only working prototype. And they were holding the only working prototype. I dispatched them and recovered the real soul trap. So she says, excellent. This explains why Ghost Widow was unwilling to share her soul trap with the rest of us. The circle had taken over her lab and taken possession of the working prototype. She must have feared that word of her failure would spread. Now leave me alone with this soul trap, Nightmare Lass. I have work to do. Now what's she going to do here? She says, I have done some tinkering with the soul trap, and I believe it is now ideally suited to my purposes. It will now enable you to track down and destroy Circle of Thorns mages. It seems the circle was right to fear it. The only task that remains is to test my weapon on the circle, take the soul trap to Primeva, Nightmare Lass, and lay waste to the ruins of Ornbega. We have a temporary power, which is the soul trap. Well, I'm going to put that up here. Maybe we'll use it. So let's see, how long have we been going? 16 minutes. Alright, so I think we will just auto-teleport to the site, and this will be our second and final mission of this episode. Should get us a second bead in level 44, so 2 episodes and 2 beads. It's not a bad pace. I mean, if you work that out, it's about 5 hours to gain a level. And if that continues for the rest of the 40s, I think it might get a little longer, but if it were to continue, that would mean we have about, I have about 30 hours left of the game. Let's head inside. So, in terms of what game do I want to play solo? And again, this is regardless of whether I decide to try to post it to YouTube or not. I'll probably record it for my own interest. I try to record all of our D&D sessions when I play with my friends. But like, for instance, last night I opened up OBS, ready to start. We did our little beginning of the session, just chit chat. How are you guys doing and so forth? Are you guys ready to start? And then I forgot to hit record. And they got into this awesome battle with a wraith, like a powerful legendary wraith creature. And man, that thing hurt them. I mean, it was one of the toughest battles they've had, and but partly because it was resistant to some of their attacks, partly because it cursed the and it was a custom curse that I did, and I actually screwed it up and made the curse too powerful. It cursed the dwarf, the fighter rogue, and the curse gave him disadvantage on all saving throws. And what I should have said was accept the saving throw to recover from this, right? So he failed his saving throw, he got disadvantage on all his saving throws, and then at the end of each turn he was able to make another save to see if he could get rid of the curse, but he couldn't because he was at a disadvantage, which means you roll 2 dice and take the lowest. So unless you roll double 18s or something, you're not getting out of it. And it was a wisdom save, which I hadn't even thought about. It's his worst stat. He's -1, so it's like he's not getting out of this. And is somebody attacking us here? And so I should have either said it was a concentration, or that he has disadvantage against other effects, but not against this one, right? Because it's like it's double dipping. It gives you disadvantage, including against itself, which means you can never get rid of the curse. Now, the fun part about this is the players didn't think. They had gone into this having spent a whole day exploring and fighting things and stuff like that, and they were pretty drained of spell slots, including the cleric, who had cured a bunch of prisoners. Great, he got inspiration for it. It was good role play. He cured them of Slod disease, but he didn't have any spells, right? He just had a couple first level spells. But the thing is, they had a remove curse scroll, which I gave them in a necropolis 2 levels ago, because there was a mummy in the necropolis which could curse you, and they were too low a level for the cleric to have remove curse, because he has to be 5th level for that. And so I gave them a remove curse scroll early in the necropolis, so that if they fought the mummy, which they never ended up doing, and he gave one of them mummy rot, right, which is a cursed disease, they would be able to remove it. And then they never encountered the mummy, so they never used the remove curse. and I'm pretty sure they still have the remove curse scroll. So all the cleric had to do was fly up to the fighter and cast remove curse on him, and he would have been able to attack without disadvantage. He would have been done. But they didn't think of it, which is, oh well, too bad. So, anyway, we had this session last night, and there were strings of bad luck, but it was super fun, and I enjoyed it. And so what does that have to do with what game I want to play? Well, I was talking about recording. So I started recording in the middle of that battle because I forgot. So like halfway through the battle, the recording starts, which is sort of frustrating. This is going to be annoying now because the behemoth is on the bridge and these guys are going to all fall. But, oh well, we'll take care of it. We'll get rid of it. We'll kill them. They'll come back up. My guys. They'll jump back up. So yeah, but mistakes aside, my intention has been to record every single episode, every single session, so that if I want to, I can look back on what we did. One of the things is sometimes, like, when I'm reading something to the players, like they found a journal entry and I'm reading off to them what they found, I'm busy reading it, and I don't actually have their, even though we're doing Zoom together, I'm not looking at the Zoom. I'm looking at the Zoom is buried 2 windows under what I'm looking at, and I'm reading off whatever I'm describing to them. And it's kind of nice to go back and watch their reactions to what I'm telling them. Like when I give them a really cool piece of lore, and to see like my best friend who really likes lore, and I give them this really cool piece of lore, and I see this sort of satisfied smile on his face, like, yeah, this is cool. And sometimes I just like to go back and re-experience it, and I've been posting them to YouTube in privately. Nobody else but us can see them, and I didn't think anybody was going to go back and look, and the one player said actually he's been not watching them because there's really nothing to see, but listening to them as kind of like podcasts when he's like cleaning his house or something like that. And he said he had gone back and listened to a lot of them, and he was enjoying it because it was reminding him of a lot of the things that happened that he'd kind of forgotten about. So I like to record those. I like to go back and watch what I did when I was doing Ironsworn. I was going back and watching myself screw up and not apply the rules correctly. A couple of times I was like, gee, I don't remember if I recorded on my character sheet this thing. I should check. And so this is a huge room. I'm going to put my minions there, turn invisible, and we're going to see what's up here. So we have to defeat all mages, so we're going to have to come up here. So let's go back to stealth mode. So yeah, several times I watched myself in Ironsworn, and I was supposed to like, oh, you know what? I was supposed to deduct my hit points here, or my health here, and I forgot. And so then I was able to make those adjustments and corrections. And it's just interesting to go back and watch yourself and see what you did right and wrong and how you would do it differently. Just like I sometimes watch these videos over again. So I'm going to record them probably regardless of whether I actually post. I would say there's a much smaller chance that I'm going to post. There's a large chance I'm going to record. But regardless of whether I actually post them or not, the question is, sort of what system am I going to use? I've realized that with a system like Ironsworn, and there's the boss, so we have to be careful. With a system like Ironsworn, I'm just, I guess, not quite ready to do something quite so abstract and open-ended. Even though I have a lot of experience doing that with mushes, it's a little different when you have stats, but they're still abstract, versus not having any stats at all, which is what I had on consent-based mushes. And so I have to think about, like, what am I going to do? What game am I going to play? And try to do this soloing. And there are basically, you guys are such idiots, look at this. There are basically, let's try to move them closer, this way there's a little more room, I guess. There are basically 2 options that I'm looking at right now. One is Dungeons and Dragons, and the other is Savage World. And the problem I'm having right now, figuring out which one to do, is there are sort of pros and cons to each. The big pro of D&D is I know it, and I know it extremely well. This guy's going to be a pain, isn't he? I know it, and I know it extremely well. Just like City of Heroes. Why do a Let's Play of City of Heroes the first time I ever did a Let's Play? Well, because I know it really well. So I know D&D extremely well. And another reason to do it is there are tons and tons and tons of existing random tables, either produced by the folks at D&D, right, like random dungeon generation, random wandering monster tables, or produced by other people who are producing content for D&D, assuming that, or producing random tables, assuming that you're playing D&D or something very like it. And so there are a huge number of bonuses to it. The negatives, there are two negatives. One is D&D is extremely complex, and if I'm going to be playing several characters, it might be better to have a set of characters who are a little less complex. D&D is extremely complex. The magic system with the spells is very complex. There are so many different spells that have so many different effects. It can be very difficult to remember them all. Even last night, when I was playing the one Wraith, I still forgot that he could do something at one point, and so I wasn't trying to take it easy on the players. It's just that I forgot that he could do this in addition to all the other things he was doing, and so a single monster, a single character can be very complex in Dungeons and Dragons. The other thing, and this is really my main concern, is burnout. I worry that if I both spend hours and hours each week working on prepping and DMing for my players in my D&D campaign, and then play Dungeons and Dragons, I'm going to get sick of D&D. And what's going to suffer, I'll stop playing the solo thing if that happens, but what's going to suffer is going to be my D&D campaign. And I'm worried, because it is a long campaign, I don't want to do one of these things where we get to level 10 and I say, you know what, guys, I'm burned out and I want to stop. I also, however, know that if you are burned out and want to stop and you force yourself to play, it isn't going to be any fun. Not for you and not for the players, because they will sense your frustrations, they will sense that you're not having a good time. And so I'm very worried about the burnout factor. On the other hand, the pro is that I have good facility with D&D now, and facility with using Foundry, the tabletop, to run D&D games. I also have a really cool idea. I was going to make up multiple player characters, but that's complicated. To make it easier, I thought, well, I'll use the sidekick system. Very much like City of Heroes, D&D now has a sidekick system. And in D&D, the sidekick is basically a simplified character who has hit points, an attack ability, maybe ability to cast a few spells, and is just there to kind of beef up the party. Henchmen, basically, they used to call them. And they're basically a streamlined, simplified character. And so what I thought was I could make a main character and 3 sidekicks. The sidekick classes are expert, which is like a rogue, spellcaster, and warrior, which is a fighter. This is going to be, we have to defeat all. This is going to be huge, isn't it? Is this going to be one of these stupid, this is going to be one of these stupid portal areas, isn't it? Oh god, I hate these. So, yep. Now the question is, does that count for defeat all? I think it probably does, but let's go the other way first. I only want to do this section if I absolutely have to, because it will take forever. It will take absolutely forever. So let's get out of here and let's try to go down the eastern corridor and see if we can defeat, just because there's the behemoths that come out of the portal are not here. They're not present in this. They have not spawned into this mission yet. So they shouldn't count as a defeat all unless the portals count. Now they might, but we might also be able to get away with it by just doing this room. Anyway, so I got the idea to do these sidekicks, and then I saw the warrior sidekick. One of the examples that you could use was a wolf. And I'm like, wait a minute. I could make like a ranger and have some animal sidekicks, or maybe like a sprite or a dryad sidekick. So what I actually ended up coming up with is having an Eladrin, which is a Feywild, like an extremely elven elf from the Feywild, and a couple of Fey retainers and a wolf. The wolf will be the warrior. And I'm planning on having a pixie that is like a spellcaster healer. Pixies are great because they can go invisible and still cast their spells. And because it's pixie dust. Excuse me. And so I figure I'll have a pixie and then like a sprite that can be the rogue, and my character is actually going to be a blade singer wizard. That's my thought. And I have some cool ideas. I made up character names. I said, this sounds really cool. And it looks like we are, in fact, going to have to go into the ritual chamber and fight all the portals. And that is really crap. But I guess we have no choice. So I really like this idea. The pixie and the sprite are very weak. I would probably mod them because, like, for instance, the pixie doesn't do any damage. That's okay. She'd just be the heal bot. But the sprite needs to be able to do some range damage because she's a rogue. And some sneak attack with her bow and her sword. So I think I'm going to, like, sort of homebrew that they get a real sword and longbow, because the one in the monster manual is only... Oh, this is just great. Look at all these behemoths. This is going to suck, guys. This is absolutely going to suck. Look at this. It's based on how many guys are hitting the portal, I think. I'm never going to be able to do this. This is crazy. Portal's gone. Yeah, we're going to have to do stuff like run from these guys. Behemoth Lord, no, get the regular behemoth first. Alright, let's run. I think this is an autocomplete, this mission. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to back away. I'm going to go invisible after I've de-aggroed these guys. Oops, no, I came into the wrong room. That's going to spawn more guys. I hate this part. I really hate this area. Okay, now I'm going to die. I want to just get out. I'm trying to de-aggro. What I'm going to do is de-aggro and then go invisible and just see what's in there, and if there are any actual guys besides the ones that came out of the portal, I will go ahead and kill them. But otherwise, I'm going to autocomplete because I'm not fighting every one of those portals. Like, that's just ridiculous. Did you see how many behemoths came out of that? And my guys can't hit the behemoths because they all have invincibility on, and with my guys surrounding them, they become unhittable. And fighting one of them at a time, 2 of them is one thing, but to fight like 8 of them plus a behemoth lord is ridiculous. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through here, and I'm going to see if we can find I mean, being able to dealing with all of these things, this is like an hour. This is what I'm saying about some of these missions. It's like, did the guys who built this mission have any idea how friggin' long this would take? Do they care? Yeah, I think this is an autocomplete. I'm not. And it's just ridiculous. We're 34 minutes into this already, and I'm not... It's not going to be any fun. Right, I'm not going to enjoy it, so... I mean, look what's here already. And they see me, which is great. Just wonderful. Even though I'm invisible, they see me. How wonderful. Yep, I'm not in the mood. So we're going to head out. And as we do, I'll finish talking about the other option. My concern about D&D burnout is that with playing both D&D by myself and with the group is going to make me sick of D&D. So the other option is to do Savage Worlds. I've watched Trevor Duvall use this game system, and it looks really cool to me. I absolutely would not burn out on D&D if I'm playing Savage Worlds solo. And there's enough virtual tabletop support for it in Foundry that I think it would be fine. The problem with that, and I have a really cool idea for that one as well, but I won't bother to go over it since we're going to be stopping. But the problem with Savage Worlds is my concern with that is that I might end up deciding I like Savage Worlds better than D&D, and then wanting to play Savage Worlds instead of D&D, right? And becoming impatient with D&D. That used to happen to me sometimes with Champions, right? I like the Champions game system better than Dungeons & Dragons. I think it's a far better system in every way except that it's woefully incapable of conveying the sort of fantasy feel that I want in a fantasy role-playing game. Savage World is very similar to Champions in the sense that it's generic, and you can use any special effects, i.e. any genre feel you want. Champions, I should be calling the hero system. Fantasy hero, star hero, Champions, World War II hero, whatever, right? Similarly, Savage Worlds has a science fiction companion, a fantasy companion, a horror companion, a World War II companion, a Wild West companion. And so I just worry that I'm going to like the system better. I'm going to want to switch from D&D to Savage Worlds in the middle of my D&D campaign. I think that's less likely than that I'm going to getting burned out on D&D. I do have a cool Savage World concept, which I actually swiped from somebody on the forums who has this really cool idea of a post-apocalyptic world where it was a fantasy world, it's still a fantasy world, but it was attacked by these either aliens or some kind of machines or engines or clockworks or constructs that were like wiping out the world, and everybody retreated to this one city, sort of city-state that was protected, and the rest of the world was pretty much wiped out or changed, completely wrecked, terraformed by these attacks, and then suddenly attacks stopped, and a group of adventurers is sent out to explore the world and find out what happened. And I think that sounds like a really cool concept too. I actually like that concept a lot. Actually kind of like that concept maybe a little too much. And that's what I mean. That's such a cool concept, it makes me want to run it as a GM rather than play in it, because I think I could come up with a really good storyline to play in. And so my concern is that I might get more excited about what I'm doing solo than what I'm doing with my group. So I'm not sure whether to switch games or to stick with D&D. I feel like I might start the D&D, and then if I feel like I'm burning out, cancel the D&D and try Savage Worlds. I'm not really sure. So I'll keep thinking about it. There's no guarantee I'm going to actually post the videos that I record for either of these. So that's a totally separate issue. Anyway, alright, so I don't know if I have the ability to cancel this now, or if I have to wait. Yep, we're done. Okay. Does it give us reward merits? It didn't, so good. It's not the final episode, fortunately. Oh yeah, we did get reward merits. Darn it. Alright, so that's the end of the story arc. Yeah, I wasn't going to defeat all those portals. That's just an insane and ridiculous mission. If you want to have me defeat all the regular guys, fine, but defeating the portals where all the behemoths come out as part of this storyline, I think there is something on the order of 10 portals, and something on the order of, it looked like about 6 guys came out of each portal. All of them virtually invulnerable to my pets. Yes, I could have done it. I probably would have had to reset the mission, go down to +0, and then be very slow and methodical, right? You kill the portal, desummon your guys, pull back, wait for the de-aggro, resummon your guys, go to the edge of the room, look in, teleport them out one at a time using these yellow inspirations, and it takes you like 10 minutes per portal, and after 2 hours, you'll have the whole thing done. Yes, I could have done that. That is so ridiculously boring, I have no desire to do it. So that's why it's an autocomplete. So I hope you guys aren't disappointed in that, but yeah, I wasn't going to keep doing that. Okay, so we do have other missions from her, and I think we can get onto another story arc. So in the next episode, we will continue working with Mage Killer Zukara. Until then, I am Scrapperlock, and this has been City of Villains on the Rebirth server.